welcome everybody. I want to, be respectful of time. It is 9:03, and so we'll just go ahead and get started um, with our program. So, can you guys see that screen? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Um, so, what we're going to do this morning is, very similar to the format that you've seen before, in terms of talking about what's going on economically with California, what's going on, in Contra Costa. Not a lot of new headlines, although some unfortunate, declines in employment locally that we'll be talking about. Then we're going to, talk about increasing economic opportunity and what that looks like. And we're going to send you to random breakout rooms with a new set of questions and spend a little bit of time just reflecting and planning for what's next over the next 5 months, our next 5 meetings beyond this, to make sure that we are having some lasting impact. So just real quick, I wanted to just remind folks again what our task force goals are. It is a new year. A lot of people make resolutions or think about life in a new way. And so just reminding of what our goals are for this group. And I think that we are making good progress on all fronts, and want to make sure that we continue to do that. I'm not going to go ahead and read that. They're on your slide and we've talked about them before, but in terms of thinking about how to build momentum this year, in terms of, everything we read and everything we've talked about talks about the power of setting clear and measurable goals. And that's hard to do with the lagging data that is something we struggle with to, I think I've mentioned before that when I spoke with the Brookings Institution, they were like, well, great, you'll know in 2 years' time the, racial disparities in employment in Antioch or, Walnut Creek or Orinda or Richmond or El Cerrito, but it'll be 2 years. You'll know what was going on now. So, but I think, but there's some things that we can do on that front. We definitely want to take action to implement recommendations from the business owner focus group and the impacted worker focus group. And we learned a lot about the lack of trust with institutions that is a real barrier to accessing aid, the PPP loans in particular, and that there's a discomfort with, when you don't know a particular agency, and the idea of being in debt to the government is something that is scary. But right, I think that we learned that there's definitely a way to elevate the nonprofits, the representatives of here in our Zoom, who have built relationships with folks. And so how to get those nonprofits more resources to expand their outreach. We want to continue our collaboration with the Workforce Development Board to reconnect displaced workers with new career paths. So how can we make sure that, displaced and affected folks in the most impacted sectors can find new opportunities? So, and we'll continue to use all our available channels to promote local, state, and federal resources available to entrepreneurs. So we'll just jump in there. So we've got, the California unemployment rate. We always put this slide up. Unfortunately, this is our first uptick since April. Things have been declining, up until this point. The worst of it had been in April, but we saw this statewide jump in unemployment from 8.1% to 9.0%. And, there were a lot of national headlines that California had half of the job loss in the month of December. And it's not hard to see why that is, considering the new lockdowns that went into place because of the sort of the third surge, as some people talk about it. Overall, payroll jobs, you'll see declining, right? Fewer folks in the workforce. Those trends go together typically. Plus, we are keeping a close eye on folks dropping out of the workforce altogether. So that's another issue. Locally, what's going on? You've got the labor force. You've got the employed, those who are employed at 502-800. And so you've got 43,000 people that are considered unemployed in Contra Costa. And so our rate remained unchanged, but fewer people are working. So we're still at 7.9%. So, we're not at the as bad as the state unemployment figure, but obviously much higher than our pre-pandemic employment levels. So yesterday, the Contra Costa Board of Supervisors heard from Chris Thornburg. This is one of Chris's slides. He's the CEO and founder of Beacon Economics, and someone who's been familiar to the Economic Partnership, and we've worked with them over the years. So he, on an annual basis, presents to the Board of Supervisors at their what they call their retreat, which happened on Zoom, just like this meeting yesterday. And so he talked about the state of the economy and what's going on. And so, Chris's message was that, yes, there are definitely certain impacted sectors. Retail, hospitality, tourism, energy are all sectors that have seen hits, particularly in leisure and hospitality. But his message largely to the board was that it could have been so much worse. But I'll sort of share some of his projections, that it, right, his slide, he speaks in far more plain English that is somewhat provocative than many economists. But right, so it ain't good, but it ain't all that bad. And so, he's really been touting, and early on talked about the V-shaped recovery, then in the sense that this is because there were so many fundamental things that were strong about our economy, that the Great Recession is not the model to look at. So, and you'll see here, retail, restaurants, tourism to lag. And so, but I just wanted to flag, the wild cards, obviously the global situation, how long until travel gets going, and government budgets being the three things that he flagged. But, kind of in the Q&A with the supervisors, he was more specific about that his entire analysis is premised on the fact that we have gotten to the point where we're past the holiday surge and that the vaccinations will proceed apace. If there is increased transmission because of these new variants, or if there is a serious problem with the vaccine distribution, then his assumptions will change. And he really did talk about that there was sort of an overcorrection from the government's perspective, and that some of the relief should be more targeted. But anyway, I just wanted you to know that's what the Contra Costa County Board of Supervisors heard yesterday about the state of the economy and what's going on with things. Similar to what we've talked about in this group, he did talk about how there is a lot more targeted relief needed for the folks who are truly most impacted. And so that is is definitely news I am glad that they heard, and certainly something that I really support. So anyway, I'm going to pause right there, and I need to go ahead, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen real fast. And I need to do one thing to be I need to make Lindy a co-host. So
good morning, everyone. Kristen, do you want to go back to sharing your screen, or do you want me to just share mine?
I'm happy to share a screen. That's fine.
Okay.
So I'm going to make you a co-host. Okie dokie. And I will go back to sharing my screen.
Thank you. So we just wanted to talk a little bit about the California state budget, which was released. Actually, we got a little bit of news on the 9th, and then kind of a full release following that, which means he made the constitutional deadline. So the governor released his budget. It included, obviously, quite a lot of details, but this immediate relief was kind of the big highlight that he released some of the details of actually before, and has continued to kind of pursue. In fact, some of this, there's hope, I think, from him that there'll be approval for before the budget is actually approved in July. So we'll see kind of a similar budget process in which there'll be conferences with the state legislature and we'll come together with the final budget in July, or I should say in June, to be implemented in July. But the kind of immediate relief that the governor suggested includes a lot of money for reopening schools. I'm sure Kristen could talk in depth with us about why that has been received somewhat controversially. But it also included a lot of money for small business, including specific grants. We've already seen this program roll out, but this would be more money. It also includes some fee waivers for small businesses, mostly in like licensing. So targeted fee relief for impacted industries, cosmetology, for example. And then this stimulus, which he's calling the Golden State Stimulus, it's a $600 state payment to low-income workers, mostly those who qualified for the Earned Income Tax Credit. The LAO, actually, the Legislative Analyst's Office, came out with a suggestion that instead, perhaps targeted relief should be given to undocumented members of the community, and that would be a slightly more affordable proposal. Some of this would be funded through money that has come down through the federal government, so there's also some conversations about how and where that would be used. But this is kind of a quick summary of some of his major points under this immediate relief heading of his state budget suggestion. I also put a bullet down here for the eviction moratorium because there's been a lot of conversation about that. There's actually a slide on it coming up, but I just wanted to mention that was something that was kind of brought up many times in relation to the state budget. Next slide. So again, under economic relief, there was all this money to support small business, and there was also more money towards the what we're calling the high road training partnerships. Those have been explored for a few years now through the California Workforce Development Board. If anyone is interested, I'm happy to talk offline a little bit more in depthly, but it is essentially more money for some of these training partnerships, something that, of course, this group would be interested in, as well as the Contra Costa Economic Partnership and the East Bay Leadership Council. Under economic recovery, there was also some money towards EV and electrification and infrastructure. There's been a little bit of debate about why that was put under economic recovery or small business assistance. I think that'll be an ongoing conversation. It's also a conversation about securitization of future funds as opposed to the availability of current funds. There was money for housing and homelessness, as was to be expected, a lot of that towards tax credits, which will certainly be of interest to a lot of our affordable housing partners, and more concentration on funding for infill projects. We're likely to see a lot of legislation that relates to this year as well, talking about making big box stores and commercial property easier to convert to housing or mixed use. And there's also conversation about a housing accountability unit. This is something the governor has somewhat spoke on in regards to possibly creating a homeless czar or trying to combine state departments. I think it's also in response to some criticism the state took this year around affordable housing financing and how some of the money that goes through different departments is distributed. Under Health and Human Services, there's a robust amount of information. I put in here just that the return to CalAIM conversation is coming up, because if that continues, it'll likely be a big overhaul of our current Medi-Cal system. And then under education, there was general increases in funding, including some paying back of some kind of IOUs from last year. There was also a large influx for summer school and extra learning, which is obviously in response to a lot of students struggling during distance learning. It'll be interesting to see where that goes, because it could possibly also be seen as a bit of an economic recovery bridge, allowing some parents to go back to work when they need to with some kind of summer school support. Next slide. So I mentioned the eviction moratorium extension. The governor, in partnership with the pro tem.
And actually, Lindy, I'm going to interrupt you. Can you go back? There's Elisa put a question in the chat. Can you just explain what is CalAIM?
I'm
before
sorry.
You go on to this next. Yeah.
CalAIM is the terminology that is most currently been used for this concept that has been introduced about re-looking at how Medi-Cal reimbursement works and how the Medi-Cal system itself kind of exists. It connects a little bit to like the whole person pilot and some of the work that's been done there, but details about it are somewhat still developing. So essentially my understanding thus far, at least, is that CalAIM is somewhat of a look of how can we re-look at Medi-Cal as an entire system. Not necessarily that what that would look like has been fully vetted out yet. Okay, so eviction moratorium extension, the governor announced this 2 days ago. The moratorium is going to be extended through June 30th of 2021, at least that's the effort. And then there is an extensive amount of rental aid. And there's been some unique suggestions as to how that would be distributed. Kristen and I had a great conversation yesterday about that, and just understanding that some of how it's been suggested, it's still a little confusing as to how that might be worked out. For example, you are required to qualify for this, you'll need to have paid 25% of your rent. However, there's also the suggestion that if you are interested and your landlord agrees, that 80% of your rent could be paid through this rental aid if the landlord is willing to forgive the extra 20% that would be owed. There's a lot of outstanding questions about, well, what if the landlord doesn't agree to that? And does that mean that the person who is a renter loses out on the ability for that assistance, or what assistance would would they maintain? It seems like there's still some questions to be answered. We're certainly going to be paying close attention to how this develops, recognizing that it impacts obviously a lot of members of our community, both the landlords and the renters themselves. Okay, so
we'll keep going because we're a little behind schedule.
Okay, so we wanted to just kind of transition from somewhat of an economic update, what's happening here in California, to a little bit more of our work here at the Equitable Economic Recovery Task Force, in which increasing economic opportunity is really one of our primary aims. And in thinking about that, I looked back and spent some time in a lot of the notes that were taken in the small groups we did towards the end of last year, and a lot of the notes that all of you put together, which I really appreciate you taking the time to do that. It was really helpful for us to have Google Docs and to go back and visit some of the conversations you all had. And in doing that, one of the things that came up pretty consistently was the need for things like on-the-job training, paid internship, apprenticeship, and just how valuable those programs are. And in thinking about that, we came to this article that Brookings recently released, where they were somewhat looking at bottom-up inclusive recovery and some of the different ways that the federal government in particular can really support that. I thought this was a great quote from it. I won't read it out loud, but I will highlight the very end of it that says, local reliance on heavily affected industries such as hospitality, tourism, and retail. I think that is certainly true for our area. We're definitely seeing that those are highly impacted industries, and that the workers that are part of those industries may be looking to new opportunities to possibly increase their economic mobility, and may not be quick to be able to go back to the jobs that they had before. Next slide. This is from that same article. Again, I'm not going to read it, the quote itself, but I do want to read the end that just says, there is a vital national interest in ensuring that recovery advances racial equity and equal opportunity. I thought that just so beautifully aligned with our work here and our concentration. What this really highlighted, this chart is actually from the presentation yesterday that Kristen mentioned that Mr. Thornbrook did for the Board of Supervisors. And he really emphasized that those that have been most affected are those who primarily were affected before the pandemic as well, in relation to opportunity, in relation to economic mobility. Those that had a bachelor's degree or more have been less impacted than those that who only had a high school diploma. And so I wanted to somewhat just emphasize that this is not new. It's not something that's coming just as a result of COVID-19, but that we're certainly seeing it more intensely than we have in the past, as seen through this great spike in this chart. So one of the recommendations that this, I guess, article that Brookings put out really makes is to suggest that we need to understand, look at, and perhaps reevaluate how training programs are administered throughout the federal government. So there are 43 separate federal employment training programs over 9 agencies. And even though we have all of those training programs, there obviously needs to be, I think, a little bit more cohesion, a little bit more conversation amongst those, or perhaps not 9 departments that are running these programs. But even in those programs, and even amongst the 43, we are still only spending about 1/5 of the average amount wealthy countries spend on so-called active labor market programs. So we have a lot of programs. They don't always talk to each other. They're somewhat convoluted. And even though they're there, they're still only about 1/5 of what a lot of nations spend. So the good news is we do have some great work being done in this area. I highlighted Opportunity Junction. Obviously, we have Elisa here to talk much more about it than I could, but they're doing wonderful work in this area. Earn and Learn, which we actually get to work very closely with on the Contra Costa Economic Partnership, is doing great work, especially with students, but they have kind of really moved into what they're calling learners and recognizing a need for more programs for those who may not be coming right out of high school or right out of community college. I highlighted Pathstream here, which is a program that really looks to give people certificates in IT and technical programs in partnership with specific organizations, for example, in partnership with Facebook or Google, Asana or Tableau, giving people certificates so that they can go out into the job market with a recognition and a knowledge of that software program. They have a really good success rate with their students that go all the way through the program, and it also offers some college credit if that's something of interest. So I wanted to highlight it as kind of a unique blend of public and private partnership, and a nonprofit coming together with some community colleges and some private industries to really try to find a need and meet it. And then I highlighted our educational institutions, which obviously play a huge role here in thinking about what industries need support and what kind of programs like pre-apprenticeship programs can be formed. I want to highlight that who is not on this list is obviously our wonderful labor organizations who have been doing apprenticeships more and longer than any of these organizations, and really than probably any organization out there. I didn't add them because obviously putting every organization on one slide would probably just be a full array of different little images and not give us a lot of in-depth understanding, but obviously want to highlight that they are definitely someone for us to look to as we think about apprenticeship and who've been doing this for a long time. Unfortunately, not all of those apprenticeships are easy or immediate to get into. There's a lot of need for those apprenticeships and a lot of interest, and we're grateful to have them, but they're not available to everyone. Next slide. So I wanted to just highlight a few of the quotes that I brought from some of the work that you all did, because it was so helpful in informing, like, where should we go next? What should we be thinking about? The industrial base group, I think, said it really well in saying we need to help create more public awareness about what is already happening and how to create seamless connections to industry needs, job skills, and K-16 education. So I think that just really highlights the awareness side, and that part of this is also about saying what is already out there, what is available to the workers that have been somewhat displaced during this, and or our learners that are interested in maybe taking a new step towards a new career. There is opportunity for them, and we want to make sure that that is readily available. And something we've been hearing a lot is that it's not necessarily easy to even understand what's already there. And then I thought these two quotes from the healthcare workforce group were great too, that they need to see it when they go and see and experience. It's eye-opening. So when you can have an experience and really understand what a job is, you might find yourself a lot more interested in it, but you also might be able to just see yourself as part of that industry, part of that organization. And then stronger support for students to know what is next, which I think aligns well with this idea that communication is a big part of this, helping to make sure that programs are available, but also that programs are known, and that they feel like something students can seamlessly move into and walk into, as opposed to there being a lot of barriers to entry. Okay, so hopefully that was quick.
Yes, you did a great job.
So we organized these questions for the breakout groups. It was also in your agenda, so hopefully you've had a moment to just kind of look over them. I recognize that not every one of these questions might be something each and all of you can answer, but I'd really love for you to just contribute whatever amount you can, and or to just help us brainstorm, because what we're thinking about is a half-day convening focused on how to increase opportunity to what we'll call alternative entrance to the workforce. So a convening that thinks about apprenticeship and alternative apprenticeship programs, on-the-job training, what kind of assistance might help organizations be more interested in offering those opportunities. For example, we have heard that some organizations might be really interested, but they don't want to be employer of record, and that keeps them from engaging. If that's you and that's your organization, we want to hear about that, because we'd like to possibly talk about it as one of the barriers at this half-day convening. The half-day convening itself, we hope, will provide some models, some really good examples of people that are doing it really well. If you have some suggestions of those, we'd love to hear them so that we can reach out to them and include them, in hopes that this convening will bring us to some actionable recommendations for things we can do here in this county that will provide a more seamless entry to what does already exist, and hopefully increases the amount of opportunities like this for workers in our community.
Okay, Lindy, that was a great stretch there. I'm going to go ahead and again, just reinforce that our goal is for you to, tackle these questions. These are going to be randomly assigned new groups. There'll be about 7 folks in each group. There are 3 EVLC staff. We're going to lean on one of our county partners to be the 4th person to take notes. And so I'm going to go ahead and create these groups, and we're going to spend 20 minutes in them, and then we'll be back. So here we go.
You'll put the questions in a chat.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
All
right, here we go.
The Brookings article in the chat, just in case anyone wants to have that as well.
So yeah, Lindy, can you put the questions in the chat, please?
Yep.
Lindy, thank you for the Brooklyns. I actually just went to their website right now. Wonderful article. I am loving it. Thank you.
That's Kristen. She's.
All right, here we go. I'm going to open all rooms. Okay, it feels pretty powerful to be able to yank you all back. So thank you for choosing to come back. And it feels a little abrupt. I am, right? I actually do long for the days where you're in a hotel ballroom and you actually go to the actual breakout session, and then there's a chance to chat with somebody in the hallway, and then you run into each other and you sit in the back at the next keynote session, and but grateful that we can be together and be safe while we're doing it. So we did just want to take a few minutes and would love to hear any reflections that if anybody wants to just, you can either, raise your hand through Zoom or just unmute yourself, and I'll notice that you're unmuting yourself and I'll call on you. If you just want to kind of share how that was or what came up for you. I know we were in a robust, I had to impose on my group that I joined because I had the job to bring you all back. So I missed the last minute of our conversation, but really did appreciate, we kind of touched on, there's 18 documents you have to fill out in order to become an employer using on-the-job training funds. Just the crazy burden that's placed. It seems that at a minimum, we should have a paperwork reduction act for how to do that and bring things like fillable forms. And but the point is that once you onboard an employer, then it's really easy. You can rinse and repeat, but it's getting over that initial barrier. So, appreciate hearing from Aaron about what's going on at F&M Bank in terms of what their, management training opportunities are and the things that they do as an organization. So, anyway, any takers to share your reflections in your groups?
I'll go.
Go ahead, Keith. I was about to call on you.
Oh, good. Well, I'm not going to try to share everything. We talked about a great conversation. I think bottom line, the idea for having a convening is great to bring people together. I think the key issues are there's some great opportunities going on. There's job training happening at some businesses. There's the community colleges and CSUs who are designed to create, prepared people for the workplace. There are nonprofits who provide training. There's a lot of organizations that are doing that. And I think the key is to bring people together to really talk about in depth some of the questions you asked about understanding some successful models. How we can increase awareness is really, I think, the main thing we talked about. How do you make sure that the good work that's happening is known by the community? And especially, I think, in East Contra Costa, where the media is not that strong. And then with COVID, for all of us who want to reach out to the community, it's tougher to do that now. So that would just be a few of my thoughts.
Thanks, Keith. Anybody else?
In the same group, I was in the same group with Keith. We also talked about how it would be very helpful if we had a partnership with the local mass media and other communication channels so that we can increase public awareness about these wonderful programs.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's never fun to be at the helm of the best kept secret if you can't break through, right? And it's it's one of those big challenges. Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and impose on some folks. I don't know, Debbie, can I impose on you in terms of what you thought as as one of the employers that's here at the table? What can we do to help get over these barriers to bring, a local employer like yours into the fold?
You know, I was telling my group, I'm a little bit at a disadvantage with some of this conversation because I'm not involved in our human resources department. I was able to share a couple of the programs that I do know that we have and provide to new employees. As far as recruitment, I know we do different levels of recruitment, but with that said, one of the things we could improve on is bringing about awareness of the opportunities that are available within our company, more so out there in our local communities where we're seeking employment. You know, we have it on our websites, of course, and our industry partners post positions that are available, like a CalCIMA, for instance, but getting it through channels such as, this one probably could be more effective and reach a lot more people to notify them, hey, we're looking for people. I mean, believe it or not, we were so busy this last year, and we were fortunate that we were able to keep people employed and actually hire people. We're always have openings and opportunities in our different specific regions that we operate. So, I think maybe for this next meeting, depending on the topics, Kristen, I can invite one of my HR people to join, and they might be able to offer some other insight to this type of conversation.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, construction is going to be at the core of our economic recovery and expanding opportunities. And cement is at the core of the construction. So, yes, for those of you who don't know, that Debbie works for the largest cement producer in the universe. So that happens to have two important properties here in the East Bay. So, so anyway, and in terms of imposing on folks, Tom Hansen, can I impose on you, bringing the labor perspective into the conversation?
Yes, from the point of view of the trades, we've been doing apprenticeships longer than anybody else. Apprenticeships is the first earn to learn. We go back to the associations back hundreds of years ago. It's a craftsman that's basically trained on the job, but we're limited by the amount of people that we can put to work. That's always been a constraint, that you can only put as many apprentices into the apprenticeship program as you can employ. Yeah. So that's always been, and in the downtime is when you need more employment, but that's when the economy's slow and the opportunities are not there because of the economy. But there are ways to help people prepare for the apprenticeships. And then there's so many different types that, was talked about in our group. Heather talked about the building trades came and did a Zoom speaker series with the students to educate them about the different trades. Because if you want to work with your hands, you're going to find a trade you like, but you got to find the one you like to make yourself happy. And so access to understanding what the trades are about, each individual one, would be a powerful way to deal with it too.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Lindy, did you want to add anything else? I can't remember off the top what group you're in. I would pick on Kish, but his video's off. So
I picked on Kish at the end of ours, and it was great because he was quick to, I think, kind of say that this is something important for them to think about, and that there maybe is some room for some opportunity for growth for them in thinking about what opportunities they do provide and how they kind of create pipeline to that, which is good to hear because it means we're having the right conversations. I wish it was as easy as snapping my fingers and being like, and here it is. But it was good to know that we're somewhat on the right track. And I think we heard that from a lot of members of our group. Leo and Elisa were both in our group as well. And I think just spoke to yes, there's definitely interest here. And in fact, there maybe are even some programs that did exist at one time we can look at where there was some funding provided to employers. I thought Elisa did a really good job of kind of highlighting that perhaps some of the support some employers need too is in creating a job description and even being able to articulate what opportunity they might provide and who that might attract, and to be thoughtful about yes, you might have some preferred qualifications, and I'm not putting words in your mouth here, at least I'm adding to what she said, but you might have some preferred qualifications, but don't make those seem like if you don't have them, you absolutely won't qualify, and then discourage someone from maybe being open to that opportunity. So I think there's an equity lens for us to take on this too, and in how we write job descriptions, and even just thinking about what opportunities and how we present opportunities.
Yeah, I want to add a little bit, Kristen, to this from the small business perspective. I do think that having some aid to help a small business have an intern is a great idea. The difficulty, I think, though, is that not all small businesses are created equal. And to have a small business owner with an intern is not necessarily a win-win, because it's hard for them to manage this an intern in a meaningful way. That was something that Lisa also mentioned was, you don't want to bring them on just to do grunt work because you need a bunch of copies made. It needs to be meaningful employment, which is why having some interface with an individual who helped them sort of train the business owner in how to actually have an intern.
Yeah, and the best practices.
It's probably a good idea. And
yeah,
I tend to be a small government fan. I do think, given all the great nonprofits that are represented on this effort, this ought to be a nonprofit-based program structure, because we don't need tons of paper, but we need people who can meaningfully interact with small business owners in getting their internship working. It's something different than a government program.
That's a great suggestion. Yeah. No, and it's happened in our office too. I imposed an intern. I think Mark Orcutt had been working in our office for 2 weeks as our communications manager. And I let him know, so we have an intern who's going to work for you. So as you're learning your job at our organization, you're going to be bringing somebody along with you. So he like with all things, excelled with that. But yeah, no, it's a great point, Leo. And I think we have got a lot of richness and resource here. So I want to be mindful. I did just want to mention again, I wanted to just thank Patience and Tamina, who have taken the batons from their respective predecessors who've really, so they are in these interim roles, at least for the moment, and really key at in terms of being our liaisons to Employment and Human Services Division, and then specifically the Workforce Development Board. So I'm grateful for your partnership and your leadership, and really like the opportunity to work with you. So I don't know, Tamina, did you want to add a closing thought?
Thanks, Kristen. Just that the one nice thing about being new in this position, and Patience can agree or disagree with me, is that we get to ask all of the questions and figure out the things that people said can't be done. We get to ask why. And so looking forward to really working with this group to see what we can do to pull the resources that we have here at County and EHSD to really get some of those jobs filled.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's great. And Patience?
Kristen, thank you very much. And we really appreciate you and all you're doing for the county to pull the businesses and the CBOs together. The Workforce Board, I'm trying my best, and we have a good team out here. Donna sends her love always. And I want to invite you guys to join us on the February 2nd. We have a full board meeting with Assembly member Tim Grayson coming to present his Green Empowerment Bill. And then we have a Small Business Development Center, SBA, and SPDC coming as well to join us. We have a full agenda on the 2nd. The packet should be on our website by tomorrow. But if you could join us, that would also add to this conversation. And again, we're very grateful to Christian and East Bay Leadership Council team for the awesome job they're doing in helping us with this recovery process. Thank you.
Okay, great. And with that, it is 10 o'clock. I want to respect your time. Our next meeting is going to be on Wednesday, February 24th, the last Wednesday in February. I know I am looking forward to February. Is my birthday month, but more importantly, it's Black History Month. And I know that there are a lot of organizations looking to do deeper
Black Lives Matter
work in that. So, so anyway, I want to thank you all for being here, and have a great day.